you guys, as I have been coloring a lot. It's been a great source of help for my anxiety and depression. I do own an adult coloring book, but I have actually been coloring a lot of my daughter's coloring books. She has tons of them. And she had this one from Easter that has all these cool eggs with different designs. And so, it's been my favorite thing to do when I have downtime. And so I thought that I would do a little bit of that for you guys today. Also, I thought that I would do the much anticipated monthly story time, in which I have been putting off. But I think this one will be yet another helpful, relatable story time for someone who is maybe going through a similar situation or went through a similar situation, even if you cannot relate completely. Hopefully, you will at least be entertained by my pain. So, I'm just gonna get comfortable here. Just a second. Okay, I'm back. So, I have our egg design here, and I will show you guys some of the ones I've already done at the end of the video. So, if you're interested in seeing how some of my other ones turned out, stay tuned. I also have one that I finished that my daughter started, and I just kind of finished it, and she loved it. So, yeah. We will be using... I'm sorry if you guys can hear my daughter sometimes. She is playing with the cats, and it is later in the day when I'm filming this, so she's probably also a little bit sleepy, so she's getting silly. But hopefully you guys still enjoy the video anyway. But as I was saying, I will be coloring and doing a story time about dropping out of high school and why I dropped out, basically. Everything that led up to this event also kind of coincides with my depression story and how I basically figured out that I had depression. But before we get into that, I will be using color pencils. Which are my preferred medium in art. I also will be dabbling with markers as well. I may or may not use the markers. I just have been recently pairing them for a pop of color. They actually bring out the color pencils. So, we'll just see. I never have a plan. I just gotta go with the flow. If you guys hear my stomach, I don't know if I posted the other video where my stomach made sounds, but I am not hungry in this video. I'm old and I have indigestion. It is what it is. I'm sorry. So, let's get started. it wasn't a lack of trying, and that was the part that I want to emphasize is it wasn't from lack of trying. I tried so hard. I just have the worst time retaining information, especially when I'm put on the spot. I do better when I've had time to relearn it or process it on my own time. But unfortunately, that's not typically how school works. You typically are in a setting where you're in a classroom typically of 30 or so kids and expected to learn at the exact same pace as every other child in the room, and it's not realistic. Everyone processes things and does things differently. They learn differently, and they work through information differently. So, but unfortunately, that's just how our school system is set up. So I had to roll with the punches, and unfortunately, most of the time, I was getting punched a lot. Figuratively, that is. Since I was never really good at school, I often was behind. Starting with the fact that I repeated first grade, or no, kindergarten twice. And I also repeated second grade twice for different reasons. I don't honestly know why I had to repeat kindergarten. Other than the fact that I was always a really quiet child. I didn't really assert myself at school, and it was because I always knew that I wasn't that bright. I never felt confident enough to, I didn't feel like I was smart. And because I never felt like I was smart, I often hid. And in hiding, I would be quiet. I'm trying to find another color that would look good. This one looks kind of cool. But I don't know if it's going to show up really good. So we'll do this one. I was often very quiet at school and very well behaved because I knew that intellectually I wasn't going to be a front runner. It's really sad to say out loud that I always felt like I wasn't smart, and it's not because it wasn't that my mom didn't tell me I wasn't smart or anything. It's just my mom put a lot of pressure on me and my sister to make good grades, and whenever we didn't, we got punished for it. I'm not saying this to bash my mom, because you live and you learn, and anyone who's a parent, you do kind of have to just learn through experiences. Not to mention that oftentimes we are a product of our own upbringing. So a lot of what happened with my grandmother and my mother kind of transcended over into learning curve for me, but I think it's why I try so hard to parent differently because of that. But back to why I was such a quiet child. I knew that, again, I wasn't going to be the smartest kid there. I wasn't even going to be even believable as far as learning went. It was very discouraging for me because at this point, since I stayed back 2 grades, I'm now the oldest in my class every year. And like beyond the oldest. And that was hard enough on me to deal with. It could be and was at times embarrassing. Most of my elementary school years, I lied about my age. Because it just made it easier to not be ostracized for being left back. I eventually, I say this with as much confidence as I can even muster up, eventually I got to a point where I wasn't ashamed anymore. But it wasn't for a good reason. Either way, I wasn't good at school. And so, by the time I hit 5th grade, I started to get a little bit better, I guess. To where I was at least passable as far as feeling like I understood the information that I was being taught. But I always knew that school wasn't my thing. Yet, that didn't discourage me from wanting to go to college. I always knew I wanted to go to college, and it was, me going to college was more so a way of escaping my lifestyle and how I grew up. I couldn't wait to turn 18 and go off and better my life because unfortunately, I grew up really poor. So, our lifestyle was really up and down, and it was a lot of down, not much up. And it became a lot. But that is a different story time for a different day. I feel like all those years of feeling like I wasn't smart, and all those years of dealing with what I dealt with at home and being punished for failing even though I tried, it all came back to haunt me later. I suppressed it, and it all eventually started to eat away at me. To the point where I couldn't hide it anymore. I couldn't pretend anymore, even if I wanted to. There was no pretending for me anymore. Whenever, I remember that Wednesdays used to be my least favorite day of school, because in my elementary school, Wednesdays were what they call signed paper days, where your assignments, that you did for that week that were graded were all stapled. Sorry guys. Signed paper day. your assignments throughout the week that were graded were stapled together in like a small packet, and your parents had to sign it. They could sign anywhere on the front page. They just had to sign it, which showed that they saw it. And you typically already knew because you saw those papers throughout the week. The teacher would show them to you after the assignment, maybe the next day once they were graded. And so you already know what you made. And you already know what was going to be seen. Basically, I always had a few F's. Like, I grew up in Georgia and we don't do the D system. Like, it's just A, B, C, and F. There's no C plus, there's no A plus, there's none of that. It's just A, B, C, F. Like, there's no D grading. I didn't even understand that until I got to Indiana, and right before I went to high school, I moved to Indiana, and I was introduced to D's, and I was like, is that a bad thing? It is passing, but it's not like a good passing. But yeah, it was new for me, for sure. But I always knew that I had an F, and so it would completely ruin my entire week, because I knew that we would be coming up on a Wednesday where I would have to show it to my mother, and I knew that wasn't going to go well. Whenever we didn't make good grades, unfortunately, my mother assumed it was from lack of trying, because my mom always told us that we were smart and that we could do things. And I just remember that when I was younger, I would always think while she was saying these things that I'm not smart. I don't know what's wrong with me. I try, and I'm just not smart. But Wednesdays would come around, and I would sure enough get in trouble, because I would have at least 2 to 3 F's in there. And it got to the point where I was afraid to ask for help. I didn't want to be made to feel like I was, anymore, quote unquote, I felt stupid. And so I didn't want to be made to feel stupid any more than I already did. And so, as I got older, I started to get a little more smarter. And if my mom is watching this, she is gonna be like, "Oh no, you didn't." But when I would get money, I would go to the dollar store and I would buy staplers, those little bitty school staplers that you could take with you. I would buy staplers, and I would basically take the F's out of the packet, and me staple it back. Because it got to the point where my anxiety just couldn't take it anymore. And I later realized that I've always dealt with really bad anxiety. Just from thinking about doing this story time for you guys. But I never got caught. That's the crazy part. Never. I would always make sure I stapled it back exactly in the same spot. I took the old staple out. I felt like I had to do that, and the sad part is I knew that at the end of the day it would come out when report cards came out, and it would be obvious that, something wasn't right. But I don't know. I still did it because I didn't want to be a disappointment any more than I already was. And I feel like that all the time, you guys. Like, I felt like I was a giant disappointment as a kid. I'm a giant disappointment as an adult, but that's a different story. That eventually followed me. By the time I got to 5th grade, I started to come out of my shell a little bit because I wasn't doing terrible academically. I am really good at language arts and English. And that's usually where all my smarts come in. I'm really bad at math. Really, really bad. Don't even ask me. Which is funny because I did a whole video on this channel about how I budget and coupon, and I've learned more. I've gotten better at math being an adult than I did as a kid. Like, anything I learned in textbooks, I never really retained. I've learned more having to use it in the real world than I did as a kid. But eventually, I was the last of 6th grade in elementary school. My year of 6th grade is when they transferred over, and 6th grade became middle school. So, or as if you live in like the UK, I think it's called secondary school. But I was so proud that day because all I could ever think about was all the stuff I dealt with and all the stuff I felt growing up to get to that point. Better late than never. In 5th grade, I think it was my worst year, even though I got better academically. It was when how horrible I am at math started to show itself. I remember that I had a 5th grade teacher. My homeroom was math in my school because I went to a really small elementary school. We rotated through 3 classrooms. My homeroom was math, and so that was the first class I did for the day. And then you would basically go clockwise. When the group that I was in would go clockwise to the next classroom, which meant that I went to English next, and then we did social studies. I do not remember actively doing science. I think that the math class also did science as well, because in 6th grade that we did a little bit of both. He pretty much rotated and did both. But That's how small my school was. So, I did math first, and my math teacher was also my homeroom teacher. And, she was very well liked by everyone except me. I felt like she bullied me. I felt like she took her way of teaching and making you learn things was embarrassing you and making you an example. My math teacher used to do multiplication test every Friday, and once you pass the test, your test would get a gold star, and it would go up on the board. There was a board that showcased everybody who got 100%. You had to finish it, I think within 30 minutes. You had I think it was 5 to 30 minutes or something like that. Either way, you had to finish the entire sheet within that time frame, and you had to get all of them correct to go up on the board. And I never got put on the board. It was the end of the year, and I was the only person who wasn't on the board. And I got made fun of quite often. It didn't help that she openly embarrassed me every opportunity she got. She made sure to draw attention to the fact that I was the only person who wasn't on the board, and it wasn't from lack of studying. I tried everything. I used to ride my bike up and down the hill, and I would practice. I tried flashcards. I tried games, everything. It just, nothing I did worked. I was so discouraged by the end of the year. I did go on to 6th grade, but she made sure to tell me to practice over the summer, and I just never was able to learn all of them, at least not that fast. I can do them one by one, but it's not I can't be timed, and I think the pressure of being timed only put more stress on me. But that was probably my worst year. I hated that year. If there were ever a time where I felt not good enough, it was that year. Fast forward to after the 6th grade graduation, and I did really good in 6th grade. I was in Big Brother, Big Sister. I was also in a group called Resource Mothers, where they educated women about their bodies and how to love themselves. I was a junior fire marshal. I was on math team. Crazy enough, right? I was on math team in 6th grade. It's crazy. much happening in 7th grade. Sorry guys, I'm back. I forgot where it was, but 7th grade wasn't really that bad. It just was what it was. 8th grade is when it all went left, which is when, if you were present if you watched my coming out story, then you already know what happened to me in 8th grade. I was severely bullied by not only students but staff, and I can firmly say that an entire school turned against me. That took a toll on an already hard year academically. Academically, I was not doing that well. I'm sorry if you guys can hear the car outside. Academically, I wasn't doing that well in 8th grade. But that pretty much threw my entire focus off to the point where I didn't want to go to school anymore. That same year, I also had a lot going on at home. We didn't have anywhere to live, and we were living with my grandmother again. And my mom had made the decision to move us to Indiana. And I was actually relieved about it because I felt like it was going to be a fresh start, so to speak. Or at least that's what I thought. And it kind of was, but it wasn't. It kind of was, but it wasn't. I took a lot of mental baggage from the situation. I left in Georgia with me. With me to Indiana. And I took a lot of that baggage with me to Indiana, and it mentally ate away at me. I started doing a lot of things that weren't typically me. A lot of different behaviors. I noticed that I became really angry and really withdrawn from everything. Eventually, I was in relationships that weren't good. I got into reputation-wise, I made myself look like someone I wasn't. And as a result of me being angry, I started to treat people in ways that isn't me. Like it just isn't me, and it's because I had a wall built up, because I knew from that situation, from my bullying situation, I knew how ruthless people could be. I went into life thinking that people had a good heart and that people don't intentionally try to hurt you, but that's not true. I learned that wasn't true. People will take a jab at you and at your character first chance they get. And only the strong survive life is something I had to learn. you have to build up a tough skin, and let's just say that this situation helped me do that. Okay. I became mean, really mean. I've always been outspoken, but I started to become malicious. I also just got to the point where I was ruthless. Like, I didn't care about people's feelings. No one cared about mine. If people wanted me to be whatever people said I was, that's what I was. It was a sad ripple effect that eventually ate away at not only my confidence, but my personality. I used to be a really bubbly, really funny, really lovable girl, and honestly, all that went right out the window. It went all out the window when I moved to India. By the time I barely made it through 9th grade, to be really honest. I wasn't really there mentally. I was already really clocked out, but by the time I got in 10th grade, I only made it through, not even barely, I didn't even make it through the first semester. I just mentally couldn't take it anymore. I started to become in a daze. It was like going through the hallways. I was so lonely. I had pushed so many people away. And so by the time it was almost the end of the semester, or like the middle, I want to say it was like the middle, I was so mentally done. I was numb, but I was in so much pain that I didn't want to live anymore. Sorry about the plane, guys. I was in ROTC because my sister used to trade stories about how they were in ROTC. My mom was also in the military. And I just felt like I was so left out. Like I felt like I didn't have anything in common with my mom, but that is a different story. Her and my sister always seemed to have had things in common, and I just felt left out. So I joined, even though I don't take authority well at all. Like, I'm a very give orders, not take orders type of girl. But I did this anyway, even though I knew that it was not going to be a good experience for me. The sad part is that it wasn't the problem at all. It's just my body was finally just so sick of everything I dealt with. Everything I had dealt with, it was just so done with everything that my body and my mind, my depression was already eating at me months before, and I was trying to ignore it. I was still trying to be me, and I was fading further and further away from myself. Eventually, my ROTC class was on a very empty hall, and it was the only class on that hall, and it was up a set of stairs. And I remember that it was time to change classes and go to our next class, and everybody, the halls would flood with kids. And I remember standing in my locker and I felt nothing. Like, I was like, why am I going? Why am I doing any of this? I just felt nothing. I felt so numb to everything. I didn't understand why I was even there. I waited for everyone to go to class, and once everyone was in class and everything, the halls were quiet. I remember feeling so done and just so sick of how my life was going and how everything from at home to in my head, I remember feeling so completely done. Every step I took up one of those stairs felt like I was climbing Mount Everest. I eventually got up the stairs, and at this point I am bawling my eyes out, like, because I know exactly what I'm thinking about. And I get up the stairs and I stand there at the end of the staircase, and I turn around and I face the rail, and I take my backpack off and I look over the rail, and I think that if I jump right now, no one would care. No one would see me. No one would remember me. There's no one out here, so I could just die. And so I took my backpack off and I climbed up on the little higher railing, and as I got ready to put my leg over the rail, and at this point I'm crying to the point where I can't even see, I start to hear someone talking to me. Mind you that my ROTC was Marines, and they do not show emotion. They are not very emotional people. They are very hardened. And I do not remember his rank, but he was no different. And when he came out, and he had noticed that I wasn't in my desk, and when he came out and he saw me standing on the rail, he immediately stopped, and he just said that I know whatever you feel right now, there's nothing I can say that's going to make you feel better. But I care. I'm going to care if you jump. And I wasn't trying to hear it. I was so done. I just turned around and I looked at him, and he's tears in my eyes, and he's just standing there looking at me like he's begging me not to jump. I remember going to the restroom to wipe my face. I told him that I would come back, and I think he was concerned that I wouldn't come back. He wanted to get me out, but I didn't want to. I'm sure that he told someone, but I never went to class that day. And when I went home the next day, I didn't go to school. I didn't tell anyone what happened. And by the second day of not going to school, my mom was upset. So completely upset, because growing up, a GED was just not acceptable, and dropping out was not acceptable. I told my mom that I just didn't want to go to school anymore. I couldn't explain to her why I couldn't. I just kept telling her, I can't go back. You can't make me go back. At this point, I am 17. My mother and me got into a really serious argument that day. She was so upset with me and so disappointed, and I was so disappointed in myself because yet again I felt like a failure. It did not go well. I'm not going to say what happened, but it was bad. It was all bad. I did drop out that year, and it took a while. I was never truly okay. I didn't start getting therapy until later on, but I dropped out 10th grade year, and I went back and got my GED and graduated the year I was supposed to. And I graduated, I want to say, I graduated about 4 months ahead of my actual class. And I was top of my class. I worked really hard. I was there every day. I eventually decided that I wanted to go to art school, and later on, I did attempt to go to art school, but everything that I went through, throughout those years in school, I never really dealt with. I jumped straight into my GED, and I'd also gotten out of a really bad relationship, and a really toxic relationship, and it was all bad. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, it was all bad. Art school, at this point, I was with, if you're already familiar with my love story, I was with Patrick when I went to art school, and my depression that I thought was kind of on the back burner, sorry if I'm shaking you guys, made a return. And so I felt lonely in college. It was horrible. I was in there with all these young children. I mean, they were young. Their mindset was young. Everything. really well in college. I had a 4.0. I almost made it a whole year. I tried to stick it out, but I started having financial aid issues that were a setback for me as well. And like I said, a lot of my mental setbacks started to come back yet again, even though they never left. I never really dealt with them. So, by the time story, you will know that I had a miscarriage. But that was before college. But I never really dealt with it. And so a lot of that and other things started to come to play for me. And I was dealing with, again, another bad living situation. Relationship with me and my mother was crumbling. And it eventually got to the point where we did not speak for, I want to say a year. I want to say it's about a year, 2 years. I'm gonna say a year and a half. My grandmother passed, and that is what brought us back together. And I don't know if I've already said it on this channel, but I grew up with my grandmother. My mother was in the military, and so that is who we lived with when she was gone. My grandmother was like a mother to me, right beside my actual mother. And we were extremely close. But we did not end on good terms when I left the house either, because I felt like she was taking my mom's side. And so I have a lot of regret about that as well. I eventually tried to mend things with my mom, and in the midst of mending things with my mom, me and my sister's relationship was crumbling. And I got pregnant with my daughter, and I really want my camera cut off. This video is super long, guys. I really wanted my mother to be a part of my daughter's life, and so I tried really hard to make things work with my mom and fix things. But I also, after I had my daughter, I had postpartum really bad, and that led to it pretty much made the depression that was already there, not to mention that my relationship was not in a good place. And I eventually did therapy, and a lot of my techniques that I learned in therapy I use with my mother today, so that we can continue to have a healthy relationship. So yeah, I dropped out of high school in 10th grade. I was 17 years old, and I got my I later got my GED, top of my class, I did have an actual graduation ceremony. If I can, I will insert the picture of me in my cap and gown into this video, if I can find it. I just want to say that if you are feeling alone and having thoughts of suicide, that there are places that you can reach out to. There are resources out here, and there are people who care. I care. You can always find me on Facebook, and you're more than welcome to message me and talk to me about it. And if you're not comfortable with that, then, and you don't have anyone around you, always look for resources, and I will find a few and put them in the description down below. I hope that if you are thinking about dropping out of school, or if you already did and you are feeling as if you are a failure, I hope that you know you're not, and that you are worthy of everything this world has to offer, and that you are just as good as anyone else. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I know that it was super long. It's kind of hard to tell things how they happened without actually being there sometimes, but I hope you guys know that I'm just as human as anyone else, and that I share my experiences as much as I possibly can, because I know there are other people out there who feel alone and feel like they have no one, or feel like they're the only people going through things, and you're not. I love you guys to the moon and back for supporting me, although you barely know me. And I hope that my story helps somebody who may have been going through a hard time or feeling like they aren't good enough. I spoke on how I felt like I wasn't smart growing up, and I want to say now that I've realized that it wasn't me necessarily. I feel like our school system isn't really set up to help every child succeed. And it's one of the things that I focus on now with my daughter, and making sure that my daughter is set up to succeed at her own pace, and that she isn't set to a standard of everyone else. Everyone is different, everyone thinks different, everyone acts different, everyone is different, and that is what makes all of us beautiful and unique. I hope that you all are doing well, and I hope that you know that you can do and be anything in this world. And if you are younger and you are still in school, I am by no means telling you to not take school seriously or to drop out, by no means, but a GED is just as, I actually think that it is harder to get. Mine was way harder to get. I crammed 4 years of school in a month and a half, 2 months. I only had 2 months in my program. It was a special program, and I learned 4 years of high school in a month and 2 months. The same girl who felt like she wasn't smart, the same girl who couldn't pass a multiplication test and was ostracized for it, the same girl who stayed back 2 grades, the same girl who was told in 2nd grade that she couldn't read because she was shy. I could read in 2nd grade. I just didn't want to read out loud because I was shy. I'm the same girl who grew up poor and whose family lived through numerous evictions, and there are plenty of opportunities out here. You just have to find the ones for you. And if you can't find any, make ones. Make opportunities for yourself. You are capable of doing any and everything. I hope that you guys know how special you are and how grateful I am to have you here and watching. Here is the end product. I'll show you my other ones. watching. I'm sorry this video was so long, and if you made it to the end, you're a real one, okay? I look forward to being able to do more things to show you guys how much I appreciate you. I'm working really hard on getting there. And